Ladies and gentlemen, are you trying to get the most out of your FEHB, your federal health insurance, this open season? Or maybe you're not even worried about open season. You just want to make sure your plan still makes sense for you. Well, great question. Today we're talking about the 5 biggest and most important things you need to know / strategies so that you know for sure you have the best plan that makes sense for you, that you're not wasting a whole bunch of money on, that makes and fits your situation perfectly. That is the goal. Now, if you are a federal employee thinking about retirement, you are in an incredible spot. Here on the channel, we talk about the TSP, health insurance, your pension, everything in between to make sure you're getting the most out of your federal retirement. So let's dive right in. Number 1, the first strategy / question that you have to answer to make sure you're on the right path. And that is, why do you have the current FEHB plan that you have? Sometimes this is one of the hardest questions to answer. And unfortunately, and fortunately, the truthful answer that I get most of the time to that question is, well, that's just what everyone else was doing. That's just what seemed to fit. And I haven't changed it in years. And if that's you, don't feel bad. It's totally okay. Many of us make decisions and we just want to not have to change it. That is totally understandable. But now's a good chance to take a look at it and to make sure it still makes sense for you. So this open season is a great time. And maybe you're watching this video not during open season. That's totally fine. Next year, every single year, you have open season to make changes. And there's 2 places to go where you can look up plans that potentially may be a better fit for you. And I linked them in the article associated with this video, which you can find on the website, hawesfederaladvisors.com. But long story short, OPM has an FEHB search tool, which you can search based on your area, what plans are available, and the key pieces like the price, what it covers and everything is in with that tool. Now, there's another tool called Checkbook that you could look up as well. And that tool is very easy to use, has lots of great information, but it tends to not be free. Some agencies do provide access to it for their employees, but not all do. So you may not have free access to that. But if you do, hey, that is a great place to go. So that is the first question to ask is, why do you have the current plan you have? And if you have a specific, great reason, then great. Maybe you don't have to make any changes, but you certainly want to listen to the next 4 strategies to make sure you're getting the most out of everything. So strategy number 2, and these are all strategies and things to think about while you're working, okay? Because one big thing to know about while you're working as a federal employee is that the government actually pays about 70 to 75% of the premiums for your health insurance. So if you're paying, let's say, $300-400 a month, well, they're paying 3 times or 4 times that, depending on exactly how much they are paying. So 3 to 4 times what you're paying is what they're paying, right? It's a large amount that they're paying for you. And one thing to understand, as long as you're eligible to keep your FEHB in retirement, they're going to continue paying their portion of your premium even into retirement. So that's why health insurance is one of the best benefits you have. And assuming you're eligible to keep it, that is a great place to be. But then one situation I get all the time is, okay, but my spouse is working. They're a non-federal employee and they have health insurance too. Should I use that, or should they use their plan? First question to answer there is, are you within 5 years of retirement? Because one of the biggest criteria for you to be able to keep your FEHB into retirement is to be covered by an FEHB for the 5 years before you retire. And so if you are within 5 years, even if, let's say, your spouse who has a great plan through their employer, who maybe their prices are better over there, who knows, I don't know, then you don't want to take them up on their plan. You want to stick to FEHB so you can keep it into retirement. Because one of the biggest things I see is, while some employers, private employers, do offer to pay a bigger percentage of health insurance while someone is employed, it is rare that they will continue to allow you to stay on the health insurance and to continue paying their piece of it into retirement. That is very rare. That's why being a federal employee is so great. You have the ability to do that, to keep that into retirement, okay? Now, if you are far from retirement and your spouse has a cheaper plan, hey, maybe take them up on it for now. And then, of course, well before 5 years, you want to make sure that you jump onto FEHB so you get those 5 years before retirement covered under FEHB. And you want to be careful, because who knows what life is going to bring. And so if you're not covered under FEHB and then your plans change and you have to work another 5 years, that is really hard for you. That may be painful. So you want to make sure you are covered and that you have the 5 years you need to keep that into retirement. Okay. So while you're working, another thought is, what if your spouse is a federal employee as well? In that case, there's a couple things to think about. Sometimes, if of course you have kids, maybe a family plan may make the most sense, but because you and your spouse are federal employees, you can decide to both do, let's say, self-only plans, or to break it up some other way. Maybe do just one self+1 plan or a family plan if you have kids, right? You can choose, and what you may want to do is, if one of you has more intense medical issues than the other, maybe get an expensive plan for one of you, but not the other. So you don't have to pay a high premium for both of you when that is not necessarily needed. So keep that in mind as well. And you could even just look at the prices for, let's say, an identical plan. Sometimes it's cheaper to do a self+1, but sometimes it's cheaper just to do 2 self-onlys. It depends on the plan. You want to check for yourself what makes sense for you. So those are the things to think about while you're still working, okay? What insurance does your spouse have if they're working? Can they keep it into retirement? If your spouse is a federal employee, the different strategies to think about there. Number 3, the third strategy that you want to maybe think about while you're working is using an FSA and an HSA. Now, these tools are so underutilized, it's ridiculous. Very few people actually take the government up on these options, and they can save tons of money on expenses that you're going to spend for anyway. You're going to save bunches in taxes. Now, HSA versus FSA, there's tons of details here. I'm not going to go into it here, but I did write in a whole article and a whole video on this topic. So if you just Google HSA versus FSA Haas Federal Advisors, it'll pop right up and you can find exactly all the things to think about there. But long story short, many people can save thousands and thousands of dollars and have tons of money saved away for their health expenses down the road because of these tools. So definitely check it out. Number 4, the fourth strategy that, again, this one is overlooked all the time, is people overpaying or getting double coverage for their dental/vision insurance. So as you know, as a federal employee, you have access to get separate dental and vision insurance outside of your FEHB. However, did you know that many FEHB plans actually cover dental and vision expenses? And so some employees actually have double coverage, meaning they're paying premiums for something that's going to be covered already, meaning they're wasting money, right? And so you want to make sure, if you have dental and vision needs, what's the best way to cover that? Maybe you could look around and find an FEHB plan that is maybe the same price that you're paying, but they may cover dental and vision that you use already, right? What does your FEHB plan cover? Do they cover the dental and vision expenses you need already? Because some people don't have very many dental and vision expenses. It depends on your situation. So you want to check for you first, what dental and vision needs do you have? What coverage do you have? And does your FEHB plan cover that already? If not, can you find one that does? So maybe you can drop your dental and vision and save some money in the process. Food for thought. Okay, lastly, so this last tip is going to be for those that are approaching or in retirement, because there's different strategies and things that you want to think about when it comes to having FEHB and making sure, of course, you can keep it into retirement, but you want to get the most out of it in retirement as well. Number 1, have you elected a survivor benefit on your pension for your spouse? If you haven't, if you pass first, then they will no longer be able to stay on your health insurance. So that's crucial. You want to make sure that you have elected a survivor benefit so they can keep on your health insurance after you. Now, of course, if your spouse is a federal employee as well and they have health insurance on their own record, then you may not need to, but you want to make sure first they have the health insurance that they need for the rest of their life as well. So that's super important. Now, one big change actually that happens when you retire on your health insurance is, while the federal government does still pay their portion of your premium, one big change that happens to your health insurance once you go into retirement is you no longer get a tax break for that expense. So for example, right now, if you, let's say, make $100,000 of taxable income, if you pay $5,000 in FEHB premiums, then your taxable income is actually going to be $95,000. It reduces your taxable income. Well, that tax break goes away in retirement. You no longer get that tax deduction. So while the price does technically stay the same for you in retirement, you don't get that tax deduction. So it will cost you a little more after tax just so you know, keep that in mind. And as you probably know, the FEHB plan, just like you're working, the price will go up with inflation over time, as I'm sure you've come to get used to during your career. And then it'll do the same thing in retirement as well. Okay, last thing, what about Medicare? When you're retiring or approaching 65, Medicare becomes a big player in your plan, in your finances, in your health insurance. So you want to make sure you have a plan for that. Now, again, I could do a whole video on that, and I have done many videos on FEHB and Medicare and whether you need both of them. So if you want to check that out, just Google FEHB and Medicare, Haas Federal Advisors. You'll find a number of videos and things that we've done on that, so you could figure out for you what elements of Medicare you need and make sense for you to get the most out of your health insurance now and into retirement. So I hope that was helpful. If you have any other questions, put in the comments below. We're doing our best to create future content based on the questions and comments you guys have. So I hope that was helpful. If you're new here, consider joining this incredible community of federal employees trying to get the most out of their future. And I'll see you guys next time.